Alright, Lego is back with a mini project, which is also a sort of meta project. Every once in a while, I do something that is a bit fourth wall breaking, but in this case, I could not let the idea go of making a draft of a draft. So, what you're seeing here is basically just me making a blueprint, and this is, funnily enough, the second time I'm making a meta themed blueprint style drawing. So I could have reused that old template, but I decided to do it anew with a few different techniques, some different shadings, and another way of doing the grid. If you're interested in watching the original blueprint project, I'll have it linked below. But there's not much to it. You have a blue tinted background, you make some sort of grid, and then what I struggled with the most actually was figuring out if I wanted to have a smart system going on in terms of the borders. In a real technical drawing, you often have these zones, which helps you identify parts of the drawing, but I don't really put much effort into making them the way I would a real project, so I just ended up sort of putting them off to the sideline, maybe just using them decoratively. But at this point, I'm trying to figure out what I actually want to do drawing wise. I figured pretty early on I wanted to show different stages of a draft. So, first off, I'm making a really intentionally bad hand drawing with just the bare bones of what this is supposed to end up looking. So, this is a draft in the truest sense of the word. And I spent probably far too long on trying to figure out if I could make it look even more hand drawn without actually just biting the bullet and doing it by hand. But it's pretty node intensive to give the illusion of something being hand drawn because there's a lot of small jitters and small variations in width throughout to account for if you want to really make something look like it's hand drawn. I get by most often by just using power strokes and sort of the broad calligraphy aspect. But if you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of handwritten notes, if it looks like it's supposed to be pen and paper, Inkscape is not set up for that, frankly, without a lot of extra effort. So I end up just doing a uniform width and then just jitters and notes about. That's my cut through. And then I made a second draft with actual circles, and this just showcases how many different positions and sorry, not stories, different sizes you can have. Any given letter, different positions, and different combinations of words. So I'm trying to make it look like I sat down and just made a bunch of iterations on top of each other and went like, what can go here and how do I want this to look? Is there space enough for this or that? So it's meant to be a little messy piece of brainstorming, frankly, so that the viewer can look at, oh, this guy clearly thought about it for a moment before he actually made a final commission. And that's what you're looking at now. That's supposed to be the final draft, pun intended, where I just decided to make some additional notes. But this is meant to be the final draft, as I said. So it's going to contain a lot cleaner lines, but it's still got some helping lines and some sketch geometry throughout. So it's not completely devoid of construction lines. There is a few guidelines sprinkled within the project as it goes to sort of give the idea that hey, I'm still drafting this. It's still a work in progress. This is not a final version by any means. And so I'm still using all tricks available to me to make it to help me make the geometry that I want, which is very much in style with the last blueprint project I made. It also had a lot of helping lines and a lot of sketch geometry, but it also focused heavily on the engineering aspect of the technical drawings with a lot of measurements and some other tolerances that I needed to have in place. This is not nearly at that stage yet, which is why there's not a lot of measurements. There's not a lot of hard numbers. Instead, it's more, well, it's an iteration project, right? So you make iterations. You draft a version and then you iterate that into a better version. And so this is the third draft, and it still shows on the actual drawing. I'm not devoid of the construction geometry yet, and it also adds a little bit on a meta level. It adds a little bit to the text and the complexity of the project to still have those objects visible. Really drives the point home. So at this point, I wanted to make um, a little area. I don't know what it's called in English. The page information. I don't know what it's called in English, but anyway, I made the little information setup there with some of the typical um, some of the typical things you need to have in a drawing. I did not include the units this time because it's a draft, so that's why there's not a scale either. It's just a quick. It's meant to be a quick draft, and it's meant to be not final. So you can see there's a template there, and I just filled it in with some red marker. Um, just adds a little bit of character. And at this point, I try to rework a little bit of the color, because at this point I have most of the composition, so I can play around a little bit with the contrast and see if I can make it a little bit more blue without losing any readability. And that worked pretty well. Now at this point, I toyed with the idea of trying to put in some measurements the same way I did in my last blueprint project, but I had forgotten how annoying it is when you're dealing with strokes, frankly. So I quickly decided that this is a draft, it's not supposed to have measurements. So I put in one overall measurement just to give the reader a sense of scale and a hard limit to this is what the draft is supposed to be around, because you need to have some tolerances you need to overlook. So this is the final version basically. A very quick little meta project, but as always, I quite enjoy making them, and I did think it was a bit funny to make a second version of a blueprint, which is also a bit self-aware, unlike the last one. So this is the project. Quick little one this time. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.